Mallory and Irvine, 1924. 29 years before anyone officially reached the summit, these two Brits decided they'd climb Everest in wool jackets and leaky oxygen tanks. No GPS, no weather forecast, no ladder at the second step. They just went up. George Mallory was 37, his third attempt in 3 years. Sandy Irvine was 22. Barely a climber at all. They brought him because he was the only one who could fix the oxygen rigs. June 8th. Camp 6. 8,170 meters. They leave at dawn. Geologist Noel Odell is climbing below them to restock the camp. 12:50 p.m. The clouds break for 30 seconds. Odell looks up. He sees two tiny black dots on the summit ridge, going strong, moving toward the top. Then the clouds close. They're never seen alive again. In 1933, a climber finds Irvine's ice axe at 8,460 meters. In 1999, a search expedition finds Mallory's body at 8,156 meters. Face down, broken leg, his snow goggles tucked in his pocket, meaning he was descending in the dark. In 2024, a National Geographic crew finds a boot on the Rongbuk Glacier. Stitched inside, a C. Irvine. 100 years of waiting, and the mountain finally gave him back. The camera that could prove they summited, still missing. And there's the moment that really got them. 12:50 p.m. Mallory was still pushing up at an hour when every climbing manual written since says to turn around. A century later, we still don't know if they made it. And that's exactly the kind of mystery that turned Everest into a religion. Hornbein and Unsoeld. 1963. An American team goes up Everest with a plan nobody's ever tried. Climb the West Ridge, which had never been done, and descend the South Col, which had. A traverse of the entire mountain in a single push. Tom Hornbein and Willy Unsoeld make the West Ridge summit at 6:15 p.m. 6:15 p.m. The sun is already setting. They should have turned around hours earlier, but the ridge below them is unclimbable going down. They have no choice but to go over the top and descend the other side, in the dark, on a route they've never seen. They meet Barry Bishop and Lute Jerstad from the other team, descending from the South Col. 4 men, 1 flashlight between them, at 8,500 meters. They bivouac. No tent, no sleeping bags, just sitting on a ledge at 28,000 feet for the entire night, waiting for sunrise. All 4 survive. It's the highest open bivouac in history up to that point. But Unsoeld loses 9 toes. Bishop loses all 10, plus the tips of his fingers, for the rest of their lives. The moment they committed, 6:15 p.m. on the West Ridge, going over instead of going back. They survived. But survived in mountaineering sometimes means coming home in pieces. The storm. 1996, May 10th. 33 climbers on the route in a single day. Biggest push Everest had ever seen. 2 rival commercial expeditions at the front. Rob Hall's Adventure Consultants. Scott Fisher's Mountain Madness. Both charging clients $65,000 a head to get them to the top. Both teams had a journalist embedded. John Krakauer with Hall, writing for Outside Magazine. Sandy Pittman with Fisher, a New York socialite. Neither guide wanted to look bad in print. Hard rule. Turn around by 2 p.m. No exceptions. The math is simple. Summit at 2. You descend in daylight. You make it back to Camp 4 before dark. Summit at 4. You're coming down at night. In the death zone. Oxygen running out. The ropes that should have been prefixed weren't. A 2-hour bottleneck forms at the Hillary Step. 2 p.m. comes. 2 p.m. goes. Clients keep climbing. Doug Hansen summits at 4 p.m. Rob Hall is with him. Scott Fisher summits around 3:45. Already sick. Already dying. Then the storm. Winds over 100 kilometers an hour. Climbers collapse meters from their tents, unable to find them. Yasuko Namba freezes to death within shouting distance of Camp 4. Andy Harris disappears, assisting Rob Hall. Body never found. Rob Hall himself, stranded on the South Summit, makes a final satellite call to his pregnant wife in New Zealand. Quote, "Sleep well, my sweetheart. Please don't worry too much." He dies a few hours later. Scott Fisher, collapsed above the balcony, dies where he fell. 8, dead, in 48 hours. The storm didn't kill anyone. The storm was just the mountain doing mountain stuff. What killed them was 2 p.m., May 10th, when 20-something people stood at the Hillary Step 2 hours past the deadline and decided the summit was worth the risk. The mountain didn't kill them. David Sharp, 2006, British climber, 34 years old, solo on the north side. 3rd attempt at Everest. The first 2 had taken his toes, so he'd lost them to frostbite before even getting there. May 14th, he summits. On the descent, he shelters in a small cave at 8,500 meters, a rock overhang called Green Boots Cave, named after the body of Tsewang Paljor, an Indian climber who died there in 1996, and has stayed there ever since. Sharp runs out of oxygen, sits down next to Green Boots. Can't get up. Over the next 12 hours, roughly 40 climbers pass him on their way to the summit. 40. Some stop, some don't. Some radio down that there's a dying man, but the reports are inconsistent. Half say he's already dead, half say he's moving, but unresponsive. Guides on the radio tell their clients to keep climbing, that there's nothing to be done. A New Zealand climber named Mark Inglis, attempting the summit with 2 prosthetic legs, passes Sharp and continues up. Sharp dies, sitting against the rock. A frozen statue, mistaken for a rock most of the morning. Edmund Hillary, himself, the first man to summit Everest, publicly condemns the industry afterward. Quote, "I think the whole attitude towards climbing Mount Everest has become rather horrifying. The people just want to get to the top. It was wrong if there was a man suffering altitude problems and was huddled under a rock, just to lift your hat, say, 'Good morning,' and pass on by." Sharp didn't die because he ran out of oxygen. He died because commercial Everest had already decided, long before that morning, that a paying client summit was worth more than a stranger's life. After 2006, the industry stopped pretending otherwise. The Avalanche. 2014, April 18th, 6:45. The Khumbu Icefall is the first obstacle on the Nepal side. 2,000 feet of broken glacier. Ice blocks the size of buildings. Shifting under your boots. Clients cross it 6, maybe 8 times total. Sherpas cross it 30, 40 times a season, carrying loads up for clients who don't want to lose weight by carrying their own gear. At 6:45 that morning, 25 Sherpas are in a section called the Popcorn Field. A ladder over a crevasse has broken. They're bunched together, waiting to cross one at a time. Bunched, against every high-altitude rule, which says spread out under known hazard, but the ladder is a choke point, so they wait. A serac, a hanging tower of ice the size of an office building, breaks off the west shoulder above them. 34 meters thick, 14,000 tons of ice. It doesn't behave like an avalanche. There's almost no snow. It behaves like rockfall. 16 dead, 13 bodies recovered, 3 never found, still somewhere in the crevasses. The single deadliest day in Everest history, until the next one. The Sherpa community boycotts the rest of the season. Every expedition cancels. The Nepalese government offers the families of the dead the equivalent of $400. $400 for a profession that earns Nepal $300 million a year. Here's the thing though. It didn't start in 2014. It started in 2012. Guide Russell Bryce cancels his entire Himalayan Experience expedition that year and tells the press he's been watching that exact serac for months. Quote, "When I see 50 people moving underneath the cliff at one time, it scares me." He walks away. The rest of the industry keeps climbing underneath it. 2 years later, the serac falls exactly where he pointed. The earthquake. 2015, 11:56 a.m., April 25th. Nepal time. A 7.8 magnitude earthquake hits the country. The epicenter is 220 kilometers from Everest, enough to physically move the mountain 3 centimeters to the southwest. On Everest, the earthquake does something worse than shake climbers. It shakes loose an entire hanging glacier on Pumori, the peak right next to Everest Base Camp. Pumori collapses. The avalanche doesn't hit the route. It doesn't hit a climbing team. It hits Base Camp itself. German climber Jost Kobusch has his camera running. You can see the wall of white coming down the valley. 2 seconds, 3 seconds, and then the footage just goes to static. Tents aren't destroyed. Tents are launched across the Khumbu Glacier, hundreds of meters downhill, with people still in them. 22 dead at base camp, 61 injured. Google engineer Dan Fredenberg, who'd been trying to put Everest on Street View, is killed in his tent. In the rest of Nepal, 9,000 dead. An entire village called Langtang, 40 miles from Kathmandu, is erased. A 2-kilometer wide avalanche buries it. More than 300 bodies never recovered, still under the ice. The climbing season ends. Nobody summits Everest in 2015, the first time in 41 years that's happened. This one doesn't fit the pattern. No climbing decision made this happen. Geologists had been warning Nepal for 50 years that it was sitting on one of the most active fault lines on Earth, that the buildings weren't code, that the slopes above base camp couldn't hold. Nobody acted on any of it. The earthquake just finished a memo that had been sitting in a drawer since the 70s. The traffic jam. 2019. You've seen the photo. Nirmal Purja, climbing Everest as part of his project to bag all 14 8,000ers in a single season, takes a picture on his way up. A line of people in neon climbing suits stretching along the summit ridge. 320 climbers in the death zone, waiting their turn, like it's a theme park. Here's how it happens. Nepal issues a record 381 climbing permits that year, $11,000 each. Multiply. That's $4 million in permits alone. Add a guide per client, and you've got close to 800 people trying to summit Everest in a narrow weather window of 5 days. Cyclone Fani hits the Bay of Bengal in early May. The jet stream doesn't lift off Everest until May 22nd. Every team that's been waiting at base camp rushes at the same window. Donald Cash, American, 55, collapses at the summit while taking photos. His guides try to bring him down. The traffic jam at the Hillary Step delays them 2 hours. He doesn't make it. Anjali Kulkarni, Indian, 55, summits, starts her descent, can't get through the queue, runs out of oxygen, dies. Irish climber Kevin Hines dies during descent. British climber Robin Fisher dies minutes after summiting. Nepali guide Dhruva Bista dies at base camp after being helicoptered down. 11 dead that season. all in clear weather. All while the climb itself was technically safe. Nobody died on the mountain. The mountain didn't do anything. What killed them was an office in Kathmandu. 381 permits. 5-day weather window. The math guaranteed a bottleneck. The math guaranteed deaths. The only unknown was how many. Nepal's tourism department responded by increasing the permit cap the following year. Francys Arsentiev, 1998. American climber, 40 years old. Her goal, become the first American woman to summit Everest without supplemental oxygen. She does it, May 22nd, with her Russian husband Sergei. On the way down, they lose each other in the dark. Francys collapses at 8,600 meters. Sergei keeps descending, assuming she's ahead of him. The hypoxia is affecting his cognition. At Camp 4, he realizes she's not there. He grabs oxygen and an axe and climbs back up into the night to find her. He's never seen again. The next morning, 2 British climbers, Ian Woodall and Kathy O'Dowd, find Francys. She's still alive, barely, groaning. They spend an hour trying to move her. At that altitude, moving a non-responsive climber is almost impossible. She's dead weight. The rope drags on rocks. Every meter costs minutes of oxygen. They make the decision every high-altitude climber dreads. They leave her, because trying to save her will kill them too. Quote from O'Dowd later, "I had to tell her we couldn't take her with us. We just couldn't, and she just looked at me." Francys's body stays there for 9 years. Climbers call her Sleeping Beauty. She becomes a trail marker. In 2007, 9 years later, Woodall comes back with a dedicated team, finds her, and pushes her body off the ridge so climbers don't have to walk past her anymore. The summit was possible without oxygen. The descent was not. She'd made the climb unsurvivable before she ever left base camp.